I see a lot of players on a day-to-day basis setting up to the golf ball incorrectly and just getting started poorly. And as they're getting started poorly, it's making it difficult for them to move their body in a functional way when they swing the golf club. So it's very difficult for us to rotate and turn if we're not set up correctly. So two of the biggest issues I see have to do with how the feet are set up and then how we bend forward to hit the shot. So with the feet, I see a lot of players tend to turn their feet in or their knees in, which really just restricts how much movement we have in our hips to rotate. And if we want to turn a lot, right, that's about as far as I can go right here. So now I'm really limited in how far I can take this club away. It's going to limit distance. And when we try to rotate past that point, we can cause injury or just move our body in a position that's difficult to get out of. Right? So in the setup, we want to feel like our feet are turned out slightly and our knees are turned out slightly. It's now going to free my hip up to turn quite a bit more, which then again allows me to get the club further around my body. That's going to help with distance, contact, and direction. When it comes to how we bend forward, I see a lot of issues, but we're going to talk about the number one issue with setting up to the golf ball, and that's where our weight is in terms of our foot for balance. Most players that I see tend to set up with way too much weight in their heels when they're starting off. They push their hips back behind them, and they could almost tap their toes in the setup. A lot of players early extend, and this is the first cause of that, is there's just so much flexion in the hips, and there's so much weight into the heels. As you swing, you have to kind of move into the golf shot. That's a really good way to start hitting shanks as well, too. So what we want to feel when we set up to the golf ball is a lot more weight into the balls of our feet when we're setting up to it. I like to think if I drew a line kind of down through the back of my tricep, it would hit the front of my knee and into the ball of my foot there. That would be a really good setup position. And if anything, you would want to be able to tap your heels slightly as opposed to your toes. If you're tapping your toes in your setup, you've got too much weight into your heels to start the swing. A really good drill to understand how to properly bend forward is something that I learned a long time ago called bend, bend, drop. And what we're going to do in this drill, we're going to hold the club straight out. Our arms are straight. We're going to hinge the club to 90 degrees. We're going to feel like our body is basically standing straight up and down with our hips kind of fully extended here. And then from there, we're going to bend forward like I would touch my toes. So when you go to touch your toes, you're going to push your hips back, right? So now I do feel a lot of weight into my heels here in the initial setup, but I can quickly get back into the ball of my foot just by bending my knees. And now that pressure is kind of into the ball of my foot there as I can kind of tap my heels there, right? So the bend part to start with is we're going to bend forward from the hip. So our body feels like it's bent about 45 degrees. The bend is by pushing the hip back as we start. We're going to bend the knees now to move the weight from the heel to the ball of the foot. And then the drop from there is just dropping the club to the ball. You may have to adjust where you're standing once you do that, but you should feel like you've got a lot of balance into the ball of your foot where I could kind of move the pressure from the ball of my foot to my heel, out to my toe, and then back to my heel, right? That would be the pressure sequence that we're trying to create during the golf swing. So I'll do that again for you. Arms are straight out. Back is straight, bend forward from the hip to about 45 by pushing the hips back, keeping the knees straight, bend the knees slightly so I can tap my heels and then drop the club. And now I'm in a really, really good setup position here, right? If you feel like you may have bent forward too much, feel free to just film yourself doing this to see if the setup looks like it's supposed to when you're setting up to the golf ball, right? So we're going to push the hips back, bend the knees, drop the club. And now I'm in a really good setup position where I can create lots of rotation to the top and lots of rotation through impact.